Right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming along on what is a pretty miserable day out there. This is an executive member decision session for children, young people and education. My name is Councillor Bob Webb, and I am the executive member for children, young people and education. First item is declarations of interest. I have nothing further to declare on this. The second item on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting, and that was around the decision session that we held about admissions arrangements for the 25-26 school year. Having read the minutes, they're an accurate record, so I'm going to sign those now so I don't forget. Thank you. To my left is Reese, who's our Democracy Services Officer this morning, who's going to be supporting me to make sure I don't forget anything. And the third item on the agenda is public participation. We have three public speakers today who are all with us in the room. What I'll do is I'll ask each of them in turn to come up to speak, and they'll have 3 minutes to speak. And if they request it, I will give them a 30-second warning. And then at the end of the 3 minutes, their time will be up. And all of what we hear today will obviously be matter of public record and will be factored into the decision that we make. So the first person on my list is Andrew Parkinson, who is representing StarMat. So Andrew, if you'd like to come up to the table, please. Would you like a 30-second warning, Andrew?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Just press the microphone button when you're ready. You go.
We understand the need for the City of York Council to consider any actions which might help mitigate financial concerns. However, we do not and cannot support the removal of the current discretionary transport arrangement now or any time in the future. We did place a Freedom of Information request for the City of York Council on the 2nd of January 2024, 25 working days ago and counting, to access documentation regarding the background to this proposal. This has not been released, and therefore our responses can only be limited to that which is visible. As it stands today, the City of York Council is in breach of ICO rules on this matter. We do feel the modelling made available for this meeting has been produced after an ineffective consultation and does not consider the full scope and implications within the proposal, including, but not exclusively, the risk of costs outweighing benefit initially, the costs of overheads, appeals and additional contract costs are not built in, the cost of running the consultation itself, while perhaps internally budgeted by the council, this should realistically be offset against saving, the cost of provision of safer walking routes in order for children to access any revised transport arrangements, and policy change implications across the wider York district. The change to transport policy appears to be only modelled on Tadcaster Grammar School students. Indeed, the proposal is in danger of only just exceeding break-even in the first few years, and with full-scope modelling, we feel it would be invest to save, and this should be transparent. This will allow for consideration regarding actual gain versus turbulence. The proposal has, to a very limited degree, taken account of siblings, which is appropriate, but ultimately at the end of the transition period, the stated issues will still occur for siblings at that time. The proposal does not satisfactorily address the multiple concerns raised in an overwhelmingly unfavourable public response to the consultation. In no way has the proposal recognised or validated the depth of feeling in the communities affected. If the council were to press forward, it would need to have significantly addressed the issues raised. Again, this points to a lack of clarity and depth in modelling prior to consultation. For example, parental choice and pet social mobility will be limited, and we are very concerned about the current transport provider contract viability. This will need resolution as a matter of pressing concern. We also believe there are some inaccuracies within the report, or at least broad generalisms, which may not stand up in practice. For example, there would be revenue costs if students went to York schools owing to the lagged nature of schools funding. There is little in the modelling to take into account of contract price elasticity caused by changes in contract terms. To summarise, we feel at the least further modelling should be undertaken and a redrafted proposal taken to full council, given the scope of implications is across multiple council responsibility areas. I would like to submit a written copy of this verbal representation if allowed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time this morning, sir. My next public speaker is Ben Hepworth, who would like to speak again on item 4, specifically on the detrimental effects on village children. Ben, similarly, do you want a 30-second warning? Excellent. Well, in your own time, press the microphone when you're ready and off you go.
The first point I would like to take into account is that this proposal is taking away the choice of the parents of school that they can send their child to. Ultimately, I've looked at the statistics. Tadcaster Grammar School is still far superior in results to any of the catchment area schools that you are proposing that the children go to. So the first question I would ask you is, why wouldn't you want your child to go to the best school possible? Councillor Webb says that this is a cost-saving exercise. However, if all the children go to Millthorpe School on a bus that needs to be provided as per the legislation, how is this saving money? Because obviously the school bus needs to be provided as free. You also suggested at the parent consultation that the children use a local bus service, which is already at capacity with morning workers. So therefore, further buses would need to be provided by the local bus provider, which currently is actually looking at removing the certain areas of the service in the village because it isn't used enough to try and save their own money. Within the 3-year group, the 5-year groups that will eventually be going to Tadcaster or to one of the York schools, that would roughly equate to 300 children, which again will put a massive burden on a local bus service, or those 300 children will need a bus provided for them, which again will be a similar cost to the cost that it is taken to go to Tadcaster Grammar School. So no saving there. The infrastructure in York isn't set up for these additional buses to be sent into the town centre. As discussed at the parent consultation, Millthorpe isn't big enough to take on these additional children, so then more money would have to be spent at the school to create more classrooms. However, looking at Millthorpe as a school, it is at breaking point with its facilities. Building these classrooms would take away green areas for the children to use when out at lunch breaks or trying to do sporting activities. One of the issues is the council have already raised the council tax this year, even though they promised that they wouldn't. This is an additional tax to the parents because they're going to have to pay for a school bus if they so wish to take their children to Tadcaster Grammar School. Okay, so ultimately, Councillor Webb, you have no intention to continue paying for this bus, and as parents were hoping, paying for this bus, and it's as a parent, it will be a detriment to my financial outgoings that I send my child to Tadcaster Grammar School and other parents in the Cotmanthorpe area.
Thank you, and thank you for making your comments. Our final speaker is Councillor Stewart, who is Councillor for Cotmanthorpe. Councillor Stewart, do you want a 30-second warning? Yeah, I thought so. Thank you.
Yeah, morning everybody. So I'm Chris Stewart, councillor for Cotmanthorpe Ward. I'm also leader of the Conservative group. I say that because obviously these choices are tough. I don't deny that, but also, yeah, they have a political element to them, and it's a cut that the Conservative group wouldn't have made. It's been looked at in the past, and it's been looked at in the past when the council actually had less money than it does now, and we rejected it. I'm also governor of Cotmanthorpe Primary School. I agree entirely with Cotmanthorpe Primary School's views, but they may or may not agree with mine. And can I just also say, I did submit to the consultation, obviously letter to yourself, Councillor, on the 15th of February, copied in Martin and Maxine. It wasn't mentioned anywhere in the report. So I don't know whether that's, I'm not senior enough to get a mention in the report, but I thought I possibly would have been. So basically I'm urging you to do option 1 or option 4, option 1 being do not implement this cut. Option 4 being do something different. It's an unusual situation because this was approved in the last budget, the 2022-23 budget, as we will save this money and then we'll consult on it, which for me is not the way that councils should do things. The consultation, therefore, was a very leading consultation in terms of the premise it was based on. However, it was still very clear what people wanted, and the numbers of 652 responses, of whom 40% were in Cotton and Thorpe, is really quite telling. Of those, 20% said they would continue to send their children to Tadcaster. If that were to be the case, the saving will be absolutely blown out the water. City of York Council will be busing everyone to Millthorpe and York and not saving any money at all. In reality, I don't think it would be that few. I think there'd be a behavioural change. But what we'd see is those people least able to afford it would be the most likely to have to change their behaviour, which I would say is absolutely at odds with how we should be and how this administration, I hope, will be. In terms of the supposed saving of 187,000, I just do not think that can be realised. I do not think that's realistic. If we take the middle part of the table in terms of years and likelihood, that put about a £90,000 saving. Yes, we've got difficulties financially, but that could be achieved in any number of ways, any number of things that could have been done differently over the years by the Labour or Lib Dem group. But if the Labour and Lib Dem groups both got rid of their political assistance, paid for by the taxpayer, that would be it. That would be the saving. All these school children could be totally unaffected. The consultation is also very damning in terms of 50% said they wouldn't consider sending their children to a CYC school. I took that just to sort of show the parents' anger. And related to that, if they were to go to a parental school, it would be
30 seconds.
City of York School, Millthorpe, and there's this boom in parent numbers, or so pupil numbers, which could necessitate totally unnecessary capital spending. So to sum up, I would say don't do it. If you are going to do something, the decision must be delayed for some of the reasons you've heard about, the lack of information. We must get some absolute clarity on the bus routes. I thought it would be a given that would be bus routes there, but it's a real unknown how it would work. Fourthly, I would say siblings. There's a welcome step in terms of giving £495 to siblings. I would say they should all be paid for. Fifthly, I would say, and so the final point I would say is if it is in any way going to be looked at, and I hope it won't, we need absolute clarity for when it will be starting, but particularly to avoid the nonsense of bringing it in now, risk of boom in Millthorpe and risk spending this £4 million of DFE grant funding, which could obviously be used for other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. And regarding your contacts, I'll endeavour to get that attached to the main body of the report as well. And some of your comments were factual, and I'll take those on board as well. Thank you. As well as those three public speakers, we have also had written representation that was asked to be attached to the report. That came in from Mr. Yap, who's sat in the gallery at the moment, who is the Chief Executive Officer of StarMat, and that is the agenda supplement that was published on Friday the 2nd of February. So that is part of the report. I've read that and made note of that. Thank you. Okay, that is item 3 in public participation done with. The next step is item 4, which is obviously this main item of free discretionary transport to Tadcaster Grammar School. We have a number of officers around the table. Officers, what I'd like you to do is introduce yourself, your name and your job title before you say anything. Who's beginning this? Barbara. Thank you, Barbara. Over to you.
Thank you. So I'm Barbara Manns and I'm Head of Education Support Services at the City of York Council. So the proposal asks the executive member to make a decision today about the phased removal of free discretionary transport to Tadcaster Grammar School following a recent public consultation. If agreed, this would achieve savings already approved by full council, and it would be consistent with previous decisions already made to remove phased transport. Should be noted the decision does not impact on parental choice, as parents can still apply to Tadcaster Grammar School. There may be some pressure on school places though beyond 2025, and some capital investment may be needed to increase sufficiency of places, but children from Cottonthorpe and Bishopthorpe would have priority access to Millthorpe Secondary School. The council has significant savings to deliver against home-to-school transport, which were agreed at full council in February 2022, and these are set out at paragraph 10 of the report. And given the current and projected financial position of the council's position, it's essential that all options to reduce non-statutory discretionary expenditure are looked at. If the proposal being put forward is agreed, the savings would be achieved over 5 academic years and full savings by September 29. Currently, the contracts to transport children to Tadcaster are with York Pullman Limited at a cost to the local authority of £187,000 each year. The executive did agree back in 2022 to extend these contracts until the end of this year in response to COVID and to give more time to review these particular contracts. In terms of CYC's current admission policy, there are exceptions for a number of villages set out in paragraph 12 of this report. And whilst these villages are in the City of York local authority area, North Yorkshire have included them in the catchment area of Tadcaster Grammar School, which is in the North Yorkshire Council local authority area, whilst the Star Mart is the admission authority for that secondary school. It should be noted that from Cotmanthorpe and Bishopthorpe, children and their families are much closer to York Secondary School than Tadcaster Grammar School. Further background information in the report sets out more detail on the York Pullman contracts, and we have 4 coaches running currently, transporting 224 eligible children, and spare places they're offered as concessionary fares to non-catchment children at a cost of £495 each year. Work has also been carried out on pupil projections, and in summary, they'll be placed at Millthorpe for all children in the catchment area who choose to apply, but out of catchment children may be displaced to other secondary schools. Manor is forecast to have some surplus places. There are already surplus places in 3 secondary schools, and these will increase as smaller primary cohorts come through from 2025 onwards. The planned admission number at Fulford has increased, and there would still be places for in-catchment children. Annex C sets out the analysis of school place modelling, and CYC is also aware of 2 potential developments in Cotmanthorpe, and we've requested developer contributions to school places. We've also referenced in the paper the capital works to meet expected demand, and if deemed necessary, this will be funded by DFE Basic Needs Capital, not the Council's General Fund. Moving on to the consultation with parents, students and other key stakeholders, an online survey opened on the 13th of November, running to the 20th of December 2023, and we received 652 responses, and a summary is set out at Annex D of the report. A public consultation meeting was held in November, and a summary of the key discussion points is also attached. We've also had a number of individual responses from key stakeholders, and these are attached in full. Other considerations are set out in more detail in paragraphs 31 to 42 and include advising parents about concessionary fares. And response to a request from North Yorkshire Council, we would be very clear in the guide for parents about eligibility for the affected addresses. Considerations also include a realistic choice of school for parents, a potential rise in the concessionary fare by the provider to make the route viable, as well as in future the non-viability of the route where the provider could withdraw services. Retention of the contracts is also a risk if there's no provider willing to bid, and also the impact on siblings, which has been raised as part of the consultation responses. In response to the feedback on siblings, there is an option 2 recommendation for siblings living in the catchment areas and currently attending a primary school to follow the older siblings by offering parents an allowance of £495 towards a concessionary fare until the older sibling reaches the end of year 11. This would end for all of those siblings by 28-29 at the latest. There are 3 options within the paper, but officers are recommending option 2 to the executive member for the phased removal of free discretionary transport to Tadcaster from September 25 and to provide an allowance for siblings as I've just outlined. And by adding in the siblings, this responds to the issues raised by parents and would reduce the savings set out in paragraph 6 of the report, but the full savings would still be achieved by September 29. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Officers, does anyone have anything to add at that point? No? Okay. So firstly, I want to say thank you to officers for their work on this document, and also all the work that's gone into the backgrounds in an attempt to realise savings that sadly need to be realised. I'd also like to thank residents, members of StarMats who've engaged throughout this process. I know it's not an easy process, but it is something that needs to be discussed, and everyone's been very, very honest and open about their thoughts. You've mentioned 652 responses. I did genuinely read each and every single one of those responses. It was a long day, and I recognise the strength of feeling that there is around this decision, which certainly doesn't make it any easier. My decision will be to choose option 2. The old Liberal Democrat administration agreed this proposal through its 2022-23 budget, but failed to implement it. And I have to assume that this was due to political reasons. This was actually proposed in 2 of the budgets. And part of the reason that we're in the mess financially that we are is a failure of government funding, but part of it is due to promised savings in previous years that have not been met. So it's now a decision that we have to make at a time when over a decade of Conservative government funding reductions have pushed the council closer and closer to providing statutory services only. Where a child or young person is already attending Tadcaster Grammar School, this decision will be phased in so that they are unaffected. It will mean anyone choosing Tadcaster Grammar School in the future will do so knowing that this new policy applies. In addition, I've listened to feedback from the consultation and decided to agree a contribution towards transport for siblings of those already attending this school until that older sibling finishes year 11 and ending in the next few years. This reduces the potential negative impact on families with 1 or more children attending this school. This is something that was not planned by the old Liberal Democrat administration, and I'm glad that I've been able to make this addition. I know it might not be huge, but it is a contribution that has come about because of the consultation that happened. And then finally, for me, we'd prefer not to be making this change, but it's a use of public funding that we cannot justify in the future, given other incredibly difficult decisions we're already having to take just to balance the council's budget. In conclusion, members of the public previously have, at previous exec member decisions, have asked that the decision to be made, the option is read out in full. So I am going to do that. So option 2 is to agree to the phased removal of free discretionary transport to Tadcaster Grammar School from September 2025 and provide an allowance of £495 for siblings living in the catchment area and currently attending a primary school to follow older siblings. This would be a contribution towards their concessionary fare until the older sibling reaches the end of year 11, compulsory school age. This allowance would end for all those siblings at the latest by 2028 to 29, which is the end of the phasing out period for the removal of free discretionary home to school transport to Tadcaster Grammar School. So that is option 2, and that is the decision I'd like to take. Thank you. I've not been made of any other aware of any other urgent business. So at that point, I'll draw the meeting to a close. Thank you very much.